What if I told you that hidden in the mountains of North Carolina sits a house so massive it has 250 rooms, its own bowling alley, and a banquet hall with a 70-foot ceiling? And what if I told you the family who built it had secrets, scandals, and tragedies that rival any soap opera? Today we're diving into the incredible true story of the Biltmore Estate and the Vanderbilt dynasty. The Biltmore House isn't just the largest privately owned house in the United States, it's a monument to Gilded Age excess, family drama, and one man's impossible dream. To understand the Biltmore, we need to understand the Vanderbilt fortune. It all started with Cornelius Vanderbilt, known as Commodore Vanderbilt, who built a shipping and railroad empire in the 1800s. When Cornelius died in 1877, he left almost his entire $100 million fortune, that's roughly $2.5 billion today, to just one of his 12 children, William Henry Vanderbilt. This created massive family resentment and sparked numerous lawsuits. The other children felt betrayed, and William's own son later said the family was cursed by money. William doubled the family fortune in just 8 years, but the pressure was immense. He famously declared, "The public be damned," when questioned about his business practices, a quote that haunted the family for generations. Enter George Washington Vanderbilt II, William's youngest son and our main character. Born in 1862, George was different from his robber baron relatives. While his brothers were focused on business and high society, George was an intellectual, fluent in 8 languages, passionate about art, literature and architecture. But George's personal life was far from simple. He was notoriously shy around women and didn't marry until he was 36, unusual for a wealthy man of his era. There were whispers in New York society about his prolonged bachelorhood, with some speculating about his romantic inclinations. In 1898, George shocked society by marrying Edith Stuyvesant Dresser, a woman from a respectable but not wealthy family. What made this scandalous wasn't just the class difference. Edith was 25, making her significantly younger, but more importantly, she was known for her independent spirit and unconventional views for a woman of her time. George's obsession with creating the perfect estate began in the 1880s during a visit to Asheville, North Carolina. The area was marketed as a health resort, and George fell in love with the mountain views and clean air, but his vision went far beyond a simple vacation home. He began secretly buying land, lots of land. By 1895, he owned 125,000 acres, making it larger than many countries. Local farmers had no idea they were selling to one of America's richest men, as George used intermediaries to keep his identity hidden. He was obsessed with control and perfection. He hired Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park, to create the grounds. He imported entire forests from around the world. He even had a 3-mile railroad built just to transport materials to the construction site. Construction of Biltmore House began in 1889 and took 6 years to complete. George commissioned Richard Morris Hunt, America's first architect trained at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, to design what would become the most expensive private home ever built in America. The cost? A staggering $6 million in 1895 dollars. That's equivalent to roughly $200 million today. To put that in perspective, that's more than some countries' entire annual budgets at the time. Hunt designed the house in the chateau-esque style, directly inspired by the French Renaissance chateau of the Loire Valley. The limestone came from Indiana, the marble from Italy, and over 1,000 skilled craftsmen and artisans were brought in from Europe and across America. The house required its own brick-making operation on site, producing over 32,000 bricks daily. The scale was unprecedented, with 250 rooms spread across 175,000 square feet, including 35 bedrooms, 43 bathrooms, and 65 fireplaces. The banquet hall ceiling soars 70 feet high with a massive pipe organ, and the library contains over 10,000 books in 8 languages, housed behind a stunning barrel-vaulted ceiling painted by Giovanni Battista Smeraldi. The grand staircase is carved from a single piece of limestone and rises 102 steps. The house features a steel frame construction, revolutionary for residential buildings at the time, allowing for those massive open spaces like the banquet hall. George was a micromanager to an almost pathological degree. He personally approved every doorknob, every piece of tile, every light fixture. Workers reported that he would sometimes make them redo entire rooms because a shade of paint was slightly off from his vision. Hunt actually died in 1895, just as the house was being completed, never seeing his masterpiece fully finished. The house featured revolutionary technology for its time. It was one of the first homes with electric lighting powered by its own generator, central heating, indoor plumbing with hot and cold running water, intercoms, fire alarms, and even refrigeration. There's a bowling alley in the basement, an indoor swimming pool with underwater lighting, and the kitchen had both electric and gas appliances. Unheard of luxury for the 1890s. Despite the fairy tale appearance, the Vanderbilt family was plagued by tragedy, addiction, and scandal. George and Edith's marriage, while loving, was tested by immense pressures. George's health was always fragile. He suffered from what we'd now recognise as severe anxiety and possibly depression. He was known to disappear for days at a time, wandering his vast estate alone, sometimes not speaking to anyone for weeks. Their daughter Cornelia, born in 1900, grew up essentially isolated in this massive house. Imagine being a child in a 250-room mansion with few playmates your own age. Cornelia later described her childhood as lonely beyond description, despite having every material comfort imaginable. As Cornelia grew older, she rebelled spectacularly against her privileged upbringing. She was one of the first flappers, drinking, smoking, and dating inappropriately in the eyes of high society. In 1924, she eloped with John Francis Amherst Cecil, a British diplomat, but the marriage was rocky from the start. George died tragically young in 1914 at age 51 from complications following an appendectomy. Some historians suggest his weakened state was due to years of stress and possible substance use to cope with anxiety. His death left Edith to manage the massive estate and raise Cornelia alone. The financial burden of maintaining Biltmore was crushing. The house required a staff of 40 just for basic upkeep, and the property taxes were astronomical. Edith was forced to sell much of the land to the federal government, which became part of Pisgah National Forest. But the real family curse was just beginning. Cornelia's marriage to Cecil produced 2 sons, but both struggled with the weight of their inheritance. The family dealt with alcoholism, failed marriages, and the constant pressure of maintaining America's largest private home during the Great Depression. Rather than let Biltmore crumble, the family made a revolutionary decision for American aristocracy. They opened their home to paying tourists in 1930, becoming one of America's first house museums. This wasn't just about money, it was about survival. The family had to swallow their pride and literally invite the public into their private sanctuary. Cornelia's son, William Cecil, took over operations and proved to be a brilliant businessman. He expanded tourism, added a winery, and created multiple revenue streams. But the personal cost was high. The family could never again live privately in their ancestral home. Today, Biltmore remains privately owned by George's descendants, but mysteries persist. There are rooms in the house that are still closed to the public. Former employees have reported strange occurrences, unexplained sounds, figures in period clothing, and rooms that are inexplicably cold. The basement alone contains a swimming pool, bowling alley, and a series of tunnels and storage rooms that stretch for miles underground. Some conspiracy theorists believe these tunnels connected to a network used during Prohibition for smuggling alcohol. The Biltmore Estate stands today as both a triumph and a tragedy, a testament to what unlimited wealth can create, but also a reminder of the human cost of such ambition. George Vanderbilt's dream became reality, but it consumed his health, his privacy, and in many ways, his family's future. The house that was built as a private refuge became a public monument. The family that valued privacy above all became one of America's most scrutinized dynasties. and the fortune that was meant to last forever required constant reinvention to survive. Next time you see those beautiful photos of Biltmore's gardens and grand rooms, remember the complex human story behind the glamour. A story of brilliant vision shadowed by personal demons, immense wealth burdened by crushing responsibility, and a family that traded their privacy for their home's survival. Would you want to live in a house with 250 rooms, or would it drive you crazy? Let me know in the comments below. Oh, and if you enjoyed this tour into one of America's grandest mansions, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Next time on Living Ghosts, we're exploring the secrets of the Winchester Mystery House. Trust me, you won't want to miss that one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.